Hello, and thank you for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. At the start of this legislative session, the Big Three made a big promise. Governor Greg Abbott, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and House Speaker Dennis Bonnen pledged to overhaul school finance and also reform property taxes. Now, less than 5 months later, they say they've figured it out.
You know, we began this session in early January right here at this table, at this location. I said, we will do what no one thought possible. We will finally fix school finance in Texas.
We took 100 years of policy and reformed it in a transformational way in less than 140 days. We said we were on the 5-yard line about a month ago when we had a press conference. Well, we have a touchdown. And we have had the Super Bowl of legislative sessions in the history of this state, and I think in the history of the country.
In every conversation I would have with a member of the House, when I asked them what was important for them and for their districts, every member, the answer was school finance reform. We sat here in January on a beautiful, chilly day and said, the three leaders of Texas, your state Senate and your state House, are committed to solving the biggest problems facing the people of Texas.
For perspective on the promises and results of the session, we go to our roundtable. We're joined by Ross Ramsey, the executive editor of the Texas Tribune, and James Berrigan, the state government reporter for the Dallas Morning News. Welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
So we've heard Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick call this the Super Bowl of all sessions. Does it really live up to that?
It's always the Super Bowl of all sessions at this point in a legislative session. You know, they got to the end, they finished in regulation time, they got done. It appears the big things that they wanted to get done. And so, you know, what they're feeling is relief.
What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that, but I think it also is good to point out that they are telling us that these things got done, that they got property taxes and school finance and the budget done, but there are still a lot of the details of it that we do not know.
Was there anything that surprised you this session? I mean, like you just kind of alluded to, the continuing unity that we've seen from the leadership?
They did a remarkably good job, to your point, of keeping the lid on the things that usually make them mad. You know, they had a little spits and spurts here and there. You know, there was big debate on this bill, some big debate on that bill. But for the most part, we didn't have some overriding nastiness or ugly conversation going on. You know, the main thing was the school finance, property taxes, and then the secondary items were school safety and Hurricane Harvey. We didn't spend 5 months on bathrooms.
And that's something that they talked about at the beginning of the session. They wanted to focus their attention on bread and butter issues. If you remember at this point, last session, people were still fighting about sanctuary cities. Right. We were still debating whether we were going to have a special session because of the bathroom bill. And those two issues were very, very divisive. And what ended up happening was that people were cutting each other up in each chamber, especially in the House. And then they were also cutting each other up between the chamber leaders. You remember Governor Patrick and Speaker Strauss were going at it. At this point now, everybody seems to be on the same team. I'm sure there are some differences behind the scenes that we are not privy to, but it does look like they are presenting a strong front together, and that there haven't been any big fights, even on issues like abortion. You know, we have had the big Born Alive bill, the Planned Parenthood bill, but there's been some minimal debate, and there's been some agreement of, okay, let's get this over with and get back to the things that we're focused on.
So now that the session's almost over and maybe we won't have a special session at least anytime soon, a lot of these lawmakers are going to go straight into re-election mode.
Right.
How do you think that this session is going to affect that, everything that's happened?
Well, you know, I was hearing a lot about, you guys probably were too, at the beginning of the session after the elections, a lot of members were privately saying, you know, we want to do what we can not to look like the people in Washington. To look ineffective, and you know, they wanted to go home. That's why they had all the bread and butter talk. It was always meat and potatoes, bread and butter.
Right.
Talking about dinner the whole time. And the idea was, let's look like got our shoulder to the wheel and turning in a good work product. And they can go home and claim that. They don't have to go home and defend something crazy. And there were some things in there that are, you know, crowd pleasers. Red light cameras passed. Craft beer to go passed. You can take a case of beer out when you go to a craft beer place. There's some populist stuff in there, but mostly they can say they did the work of the state and keep us in there, we're doing a good job. That'll be the pitch.
I think especially for Republican lawmakers, this is going to be important to them on issues like abortion and issues like women's health, where they really moderate it. You don't see us having such stiff laws like they passed in Alabama and Missouri and other places on abortion. And then on the other side, you've got people focusing on the maternal mortality problem that we have here in Texas, ways to address that, coming up with plans to do it. And for one of our legislators, Victoria Neave, she passed a rape kit backlog bill, which the governor supported, which Speaker Bonin supported. I think that shows you how important that was, and that's going to be an important part of their messaging to say, look, we worked with Democrats on these things. We didn't do crazy things, and we tried to play with the other side and get a good result for the people of Texas.
In an election that's going to have Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, looking serious might be an advantage.
Well, we will see. Thanks, guys. Hundreds of Texas police officers are walking away from criminal convictions. And we found a common thread, even in some very violent cases. Police bargaining their badge to dodge prison time. Our investigation coming up. Sitting in an office chair in the middle of the street in 2013, Bobby Bennett was having a mental breakdown.
This is where my son's like.
Within 21 seconds after the responding Dallas police officer got out of his car, Bennett was hit with 4 rounds of bullets. Today, he's permanently disabled.
Did your son do anything at that point to cause these officers to fear for their lives?
None.
The officer faced 5 years to life in prison, but instead was offered a plea deal, gave up his police license, and received only 2 years probation.
This is a simple fact that this guy can never be an officer again. Is that justice for you and your family?
No, it's not justice. He belongs behind bars.
We've analyzed hundreds of cases like that one. Some are well known, like the 2014 arrest of Sandra Bland. Others revealed for the first time in this investigation. Police officers across Texas getting lesser punishments, most never spending a day behind bars, all because when they break the law, they have something to bargain. You and I don't. A badge. Here's investigator Jody Barr.
Okay. You can't take me.
This was the last time San Marcos Police Corporal James Palermo would ever make an arrest. Back in 2013, the 13-year police veteran arrested a Texas State University student who walked in front of his car during this traffic stop. What started as a lecture ended in charges of public intox and felony resisting arrest.
Okay. I told you to put your hands behind your back. Come on. Hands are on the ground. Come on. Stand up.
The video shows Palermo slam the woman's face into the concrete so hard it broke 2 of her teeth and gave her a concussion. This wasn't the first time Palermo was accused of using too much force.
Dude, will you take me? On the ground. Go! On the ground.
Just 2 months before the Texas State student's arrest, Tyler First found himself face-to-face with Corporal Palermo. First was already cuffed by another officer on a charge of criminal trespassing.
Had this been caught on my case, it would have saved her literally being injured.
The arresting officer asked Palermo for help. Dashcam video shows Palermo did exactly that.
I got a taser. No! Taser! So you will be tased.
Which he then did off camera.
I told you not to move. I told you not to move. And you did move.
I was in custody. All he needed to do is just put me in a squad car and take me to jail. I honestly have no idea what his motive was. I guess he was just having a bad day or just doesn't like his job or something.
Investigators found this dashcam video while digging into other arrests Palermo made in the months before the Alexis Alpha assault. But prosecutors never charged Palermo in Tyler First's case. In the case where he slammed the young woman, he was indicted on a charge of aggravated assault by a public official. Palermo faced between 5 years and life in prison.
My initial impression when I watched that video was actually very shocking.
Prosecutor Brian Erskine says trying Palermo in Hays County, where jurors would likely sympathize with a police officer, could have ended in an acquittal, meaning Palermo would be back to policing the streets. So the DA's office offered him a deal to avoid prison, surrender his police license.
And that bargaining chip is a huge piece. It says you can no longer be that person. You will no longer be an authoritative person in a position to ever cause somebody harm like that again.
Deals like that happen a lot in Texas. Our 5-year analysis of nearly 300 criminally accused officers across the state who gave up their police license shows just 11 went to prison. In fact, the majority, 245, were able to leverage their license for a lesser sentence. And more than half of those cases were felony charges. Some avoided prosecution altogether. Coming up, an inmate scarred for life, and the Travis County jailer who burned him never spent a day in prison.
I feel like that wasn't justice at all. I mean, you know, what does it take? Would it take for me to die in that cell for me to get proper justice?
Prosecutors say they're forced to make deals like this because of Texas law. So what are other states doing differently? Some people will look at this and say, a cop got a favor. Do you disagree with that?
I understand how the public would look at it. He didn't get a favor. He got what I knew I could prove.
Bargaining the badge. Our investigation continues after the break. When it says what he's going to give up in this plea, surrender his license, his police license. Fair trade?
Most definitely not a fair trade.
So, yeah, we're going to try to take that license away if we have any leverage.
Texas peace officers who break the law getting plea deals, most of us can't. Prosecutors tell us there's a good reason, even if it means these officers rarely end up in jail.
I dropped the mattress, but I had a blanket covering over me. After they shot the first shot, the blanket ignited. I threw the blanket off of me, but it had caught on to my thermal pants and my thermal top.
Dacius Parker, now an inmate at a state prison near Wichita Falls, left the Travis County Jail in July 2015 with second-degree burns across his body.
So at the time, I'm trying to put the fire out on my arm and put the fire out on my legs. From there, it just went kind of bad.
It happened when jailer Dustin DeMolfi and the sheriff's extraction team were trying to force Parker from his cell. Instead of using tear gas like he was supposed to, DeMolfi admitted in this interrogation video that he grabbed a pyrotechnic round and fired it into Parker's cell.
But I'm yelling, I'm screaming and telling the officers, I'm on fire, I'm on fire. And the officers are saying, oh, I thought you could take the gas. You know, they laugh and they thinking that it's just the gas that I'm talking about, but I'm actually on fire. My cell is actually on fire, so.
Were they mocking you?
They were mocking me, they were laughing.
2 years later, DeMolfi pleaded guilty to evidence tampering, not for setting the inmate on fire.
You realize you shot the wrong round. Oh, tried and made a bad mistake, man.
For taking evidence out of the jail after the fire, he could have faced 2 to 10 years in prison.
Okay, took the canister, took the clothes, and you're out. That's what I feel happened. I told you I didn't take anything out of that box.
But the Travis County DA's office made him a deal to surrender his police license and 3 years probation, which he finished in 2018 after serving only 5 months. Now, the case is dismissed. Are you satisfied with the outcome of that case?
Yeah, I think they got an appropriate disposition. I am looking at a young person in a corrections position who went into a courtroom and pled guilty to a felony, was placed on community supervision, and lost his career. So that's pretty strong punishment.
Travis County DA Margaret Moore says her office was in a tight spot. Juries, she says, are sympathetic to police officers, even toward officers charged with crimes.
That peace officer license is a very, very important consideration. And there are instances where the objective to do justice will give heavy weight to the surrender of that license.
Of the hundreds of cases we analyzed, very few officers served prison time. For those who do get jail time, giving up the license often helps reduce charges and time behind bars. One was San Antonio area school resource officer Manuel Hernandez. In 2014, prosecutors charged Hernandez with sexually assaulting a student on this campus. An assistant Bexar County DA gave Hernandez a plea deal, reduced the charge to improper relationship between a student and educator, served 6 months in the county jail and 10 years probation. Instead of the 2 to 20 years he originally faced, Hernandez also wouldn't have to register as a sex offender, and he'd have to give up his police license. What caused you all to downgrade the charge in this case?
The extra improper student-teacher relationship was a viable charge, and as I learned the case, learned the facts, I learned that we had no objective evidence of sex, just the allegation.
Harris thought a jury might not believe the student's testimony.
The one thing I couldn't risk was that guy being able to raise reasonable doubt in a jury on her claims.
He walks away with a lesser charge. He's not on the sex offender registry. He's no longer a cop. You think the public may have some trouble reconciling what this man said he did versus the punishment he got in the end?
Yes, as you pose the question, I'd be a fool to disregard it. We knew we had to get that guy out of our business.
Some people will look at this and say, a cop got a favor. Do you disagree with that?
I understand how the public would look at it. He didn't get a favor. He got what I knew I could prove. The things that were not negotiable was his pleading guilty. Was not negotiable was you ain't a cop no more.
In Texas, you most always need a conviction or a plea deal to take an officer's police license. But other states allow their police licensing boards to make that decision. Legally, TCOLE can't do that here in Texas. So we turned to a 2015 study to see what that distinction might mean. That year, 93 licenses were pulled in Texas. The states with the most licenses pulled were Florida and Georgia. Both have fewer police as a whole compared to Texas. But they also took a lot more licenses from officers, 562 and 399. Their licensing boards have that power. And experts like St. Louis University law professor Roger Goldman say Texas's conviction hurdle is the reason its figure is so much lower. He spent 40 years researching decertifications in all 50 states and says the number in Texas would surge if Texas lawmakers allowed TCOLE to strip police licenses.
There's no doubt in my mind that if you expanded the grounds for which you can lose a license, and particularly the commission of an act like perjury, sexual offenses, those sorts of things, you would have many, many more than 69 decertifications.
I mean, I'm an attorney, and if I commit malpractice, I have to pay the consequences of that. I can't just turn in my law license and, get away scot-free.
Does it appear that there is a two-tier system of justice here, one for police officers and one for everybody else?
Yes, absolutely. You and I, if we commit, these same crimes, we aren't able to get away with them just like these officers are.
Our investigation got the attention of Texas House Criminal Jurisprudence Committee member, Representative Jessica Gonzalez. Her staff took a look at our research and is already pulling records from TCOLE on what we uncovered. She says it's obvious, though, something needs to be fixed. And that fix, the representative tells me, might take changing Texas law to allow the state, instead of plea deals, Josh, to decide who holds a peace officer license.
But the problem there is that lawmakers are heading home this session for quite a while.
They are. We're 18 months away from the next legislative session. We're also 18 months away from any new bills that could be drafted to address this.
All right, Jody, thank you very much. One of Texas' largest law enforcement groups doesn't see the state's current system as problematic. The leader of the Texas Municipal Police Association told us sometimes officers fail at their jobs because they are human, and that allowing TCOLE to revoke licenses without a conviction would undermine the officer's fundamental rights. Online now, our digital investigation, Bargaining the Badge, how hundreds of accused Texas officers avoid prison. A closer look at the dash camera and surveillance video from the cases we've dug through, a breakdown of the officers accused of sex crimes, violent crimes, and corruption, plus extended interviews for you to watch.
Some people have looked at this and said this is simply a get-out-of-jail-free card. Do you see it any other way?
No, I feel like that is what was on the table to avoid any prosecution against him, and that's what he took. That was the easy road out.
Shane, when you say leverage, that meant that police officer license
could have helped you through the plea negotiations with the prosecutor, meaning if you give that up, it could have
dismissed the case.
And that happened.
Yes, that happened.
We also show you how to find the police licenses that have been surrendered inside your local law enforcement agency. It's all online now in the Texas Politics section of your station's website. Right now, thousands of DNA test kits sit on shelves, untested, after women are raped in Texas. State lawmakers worked to change that this session, and they just sent a bill to Governor Abbott that could make a difference. House Bill 8 requires a state audit to determine how many untested rape kits there are in Texas. It also creates a timeline to test all rape kits to prevent future backlogs. The bill is named after Lavinia Masters of Dallas. She was 13 years old when a man raped her at knife point. Her rape kit sat untested for 21 years. Masters spoke at the Capitol earlier this session.
We say no more victims to remain underground, trapped, alone, and traumatized. They deserve to be free. They deserve to be accounted for. They deserve to see the light of day.
Democratic State Representative Victoria Niave teamed up with Republican Senator Jane Nelson to push the bill through. Thank you again for joining us for State of Texas. I'm Josh Hinkle. We'll be back next week to bring you an in-depth look at Texas politics.